nsfw, what have you seen and immediately regretted seeing it? Walking home during the middle of the day, I notice a car with its emergency flashers unparked in an alley. I look and see this old dude squatting next to the car. At that very moment, I saw the plop out. I should have minded my own business. Why would you put your flashers on? It's illegal to next to your car without notifying as many people as possible. Watched my dad die from an aneurysm. Happened while he was at work, and had to get life flighted to the next hospital over due to space and whatnot. He was on life support by the time I got there, and nothing could have saved him, so my mom had him taken off. It was a surreal. Remembering it now is like it happened last night. I hung out with him like a week before and would have been fine that being my last memory of him. But instead he was in a private room that was cream-colored. The family was around. I watched the monitor tracking his vitals and then back at him, with all these hoses, needles, and tubes all over him. It was strange to see him in this state. My dad was a big man at 6'3" and 280 pounds, always been the standard for what a tough guy was. He worked in construction and was a race car junkie. You would almost think he could punch through a brick wall, down a bottle of Crown Royale, and ride a bull using his legs only. I watched as his heart rate slowed down in what was surely minutes but felt like hours. It was an agonizing experience to watch, but I was frozen in place, silently praying that he would just wake up. Then that warning arose from the machine that he was no longer there. Then seeing that final twitch in his body, that broke me, as I thought for a second he was waking and trying to struggle for air, but it wasn't. I have never experienced death like that before or since. A couple good things though. He was a die-hard Dale Earnhardt fan and passed in the room next to where apparently Dale Sr. passed. He taught me many valuable lessons, and weirdly so I received a voicemail the day prior from him that while I don't have any longer, I'll never forget his words. Miss you, Pops. Edit. Just want to thank y'all for sharing your stories as well. I love Reddit for this reason. We're all a bunch of strangers from all different kinds of backgrounds and upbringings, but yet we share a common bond. Reading many of your stories as well as self-reflecting on mine today has really inspired me to make some better changes in my life and humbled me to remember just how precious life really is. Love y'all. Dad stories hit me in a place like nothing else can. When I was in 5th grade, my dad had a massive heart attack in our living room. I remember watching the EMTs cut his shirt off to get him responsive. After a few days and surgeries, I was in the hospital room with my mom and my dad when suddenly a bunch of sensors started going crazy and my dad flatlined. My mom shoved me into the bathroom and yelled, "Stay in there," as medical people flooded the room. I then listened to them shock my dad 2 or 3 times until they were able to revive him. I vividly remember him yelling at how painful the last shock was when he came to. Years later, when I was grown, doctors found out he had a large brain tumor that was affecting him badly and needed removed. I drove to Denver to be there for the recovery, and ended up watching the MLB All-Star game with him in his room, while he had a drainage tube coming out of his head. Another few years later, he got stage 4 lung cancer. Once he was diagnosed, it went insanely fast. He was gone in a month. I was really the only person he had any contact with, and I had gone home to sleep a couple hours before he died. His nurse called and told me when it happened, and I drove down to see him. What I wish I hadn't seen was the almost confused look he held on his face. I could never get it out of my head, and I will always wonder why he was confused, and if it was because I wasn't there when the time came. Sorry to ramble on about myself. Reading your story just really hit home and made me want to share my own. I'm really sorry you went through that. Much love to you. First off, Jesus, your dad was absolutely tough ass to survive a lot of that. Sorry for your loss and much love. You're way too boss. My girlfriend, another dude. After dating for a couple years, I decided to move my girlfriend into my apartment with me. The first weekend after she moved in, we were at the pool when a neighbor of mine, a guy I'd seen in the halls a few times, came in with a couple of his buddies. I caught the guy looking at my girlfriend a few times, but not being the jealous type, I wasn't bothered. But that night, my girlfriend made a comment about how she sorta liked getting a little attention. I took that as a hint I needed to step it up and pay a little more attention to her, and that's what I did. Things were going well. A couple months later, I'm coming home from work, and as I drive past the leasing office, I see my girlfriend and that guy talking to one another by the mailboxes. She walks in with the mail and I asked her, jokingly, if she had a nice chat with her admirer. And here's where alarm bells should have gone off. She lied to me, flatly denied that she saw or spoke to him. I reassured her I was only kidding and she just kept reiterating that I might have seen someone talking to him, but it wasn't her. Instead of dragging it out into a fight, I just let it go. A month or so passes. I'm sitting at my desk at work eating my lunch and I dribble electric yellow hot mustard on my shirt. I had a big presentation later that day and I couldn't go in looking like pig, but fortunately, I lived close to work so I could just swing by and change real quick. First thing I notice when I get home is my girlfriend's car. I remember thinking, like, wow, she must be super sick to come home from work and not tell me about it. When I opened the door to my apartment, I could hear that unmistakable sound of pelvis clapping against butt cheeks, but my brain couldn't comprehend it, I guess. My bedroom was on the back side of my apartment, at the end of a long hallway. They had left the door open and from the end of the hallway, I could see, in full view, my neighbor absolutely knocking the bottom out of my girlfriend in the doggy-style position. And she was losing it. She was pretty vocal whenever we had, but she was making some guttural, tribal noises for this dude. I stood there frozen, just watching, for the better part of 3 minutes. Finally, he said, "Hey, roll over, I'm gonna." And when she was repositioning herself, she glanced down the hallway and saw me standing there, and there was this weird moment we had where we locked eyes with one another, both paralyzed in disbelief. That was the last moment I felt close to her. I don't really remember much of the racket that ensued. I remember it was loud and there was a lot of scurrying about. The guy who was her went and locked himself in the bathroom and told her he wouldn't come out until after I had left. She got so worked up that she started dry heaving, which was a thing she did. I walked out to my car and went back to work and gave my presentation in a mustard-stained shirt. I ended up getting a promotion off the strength of that presentation. Didn't see that ending coming. Good recovery, bro. Only ending I could think of involved blunt force trauma. That gif of the baby stroller rolling onto the subway tracks. That haunted me for a year until I read the story of the baby miraculously surviving it unharmed. It has happened in Melbourne. The baby was okay. Link, 2 come to mind. Goatsy and I vaguely remember being like 14 and finding a tentacle hentai vid where the girl gets torn into a bloody paste or something right after climax. I just remember 14, Yomi going from confused masturbation to terror and feeling sick to my stomach. In moments lol. That hentai sounds like either Mahu Shoujo or Advance or Tina. Ah yes. Time to beat it and get hit with post-nut clarity. When I was younger my mom had the stomach flu. I was the only one at home and she yelled for me to bring her a barf bucket. I came into her bedroom as she was trying to make it to the toilet. I passed her the barf bucket. She bent over to hurl, and machine gun sprayed all over her white bedspread. My mom is a large woman, and it was very unpleasant. That sucks. She likely had to then clean it up while falling cruddy. You just fill the bathtub and throw them in until you get better. That's what it'd do. My mom one of her clients on the couch and the dude had asked her if I wanted to join. 5-year-old me ran back to bed. Excuse me? When my wife gave birth to our first child, it was an emergency C-section after 32 hours of labor. While the surgery was going on, they put up this curtain between her top half and her bottom half, and although I was rubbed down to be in the room with her, they advised me not peek over the curtain. It wouldn't hurt if I did. It just wasn't a good idea to. I decided to take a look right before they got our son out. It was likely the most horrific thing I've ever seen in my life. They take the entire uterus out, take the baby out of the uterus and then put the uterus back in. Holy, it was like looking into the mouth of madness. During the birth of my first son, the doctor relieved my wife by taking a scalpel and cutting from her too. I wish I hadn't seen that. Ha ha ha, a good old episiotomy. The first one I saw, I had no idea what was happening. Doctor pulled out this metal contraption and I'm like, oh, I wonder what that's used for? And then I saw him move in, and I was like, wait, what's he? And then heard the chunk. That sound. The look on my face must have said it all, because my GF immediately turned to me and said, "It's okay, I don't feel anything," but I definitely felt something. I saw stars and tunnel vision for a little bit. From that point on everything happened so fast. One big blur of motion, time standing still, and before I knew it I was holding a baby. The second one I saw was NBD. I just looked away. A dude putting on goggles saying he's diving into that, then proceeded to shove his entire head into someone's. Is this even possible? Think on Pornhub there is a vid of a bald guy doing exactly that. I'll look for it for you. Edit. Watched a coworker get hit in the head from a 25-pound piece of metal moving way too quickly and the first aiders trying to give them CPR. Never saw death before that and hope to never see it again. Watching someone die in their 20s is something I wouldn't want anyone else to experience, either. A woman having on a couch in a hotel room, and the guy reaches over to the table to grab a plastic bag and chokes her to death by putting it over her face. Years later I found out it was fake and it takes a lot longer than they showed to actually kill someone that way, but it fucked me up for a long time. Couldn't sleep because the image of her struggling for life was burned in my brain. I was shown a video of a woman stretching out her, filling it with cereal and milk, and another girl eating it with a spoon. Booty loops. Rice Clappies, apple cracks, frosted stank, golden hams, puffs, Mr. T's cereal, raisin brap, corn pops, waffle stomp crisps. A decapitation. I'd seen numerous simulated decapitations in film before. Guillotine. Single swing of a sword. This wasn't like that. I believe it was an ISIS video with a hostage on his knees and a guy standing behind him with an oversized butcher knife, small machete. I figured it was going to be one quick swing of the blade and off pops the guy's head, but no. The executioner holds the blade to the guy's throat and starts sawing at it. I'm pretty sure that the knife had never been sharpened because it was ripping throughout his throat and muscle and bone. There was a lot of blood. The expressions on the victim's face are beyond description. I don't know. It might have just been some pretty elaborate special effects, but it was about 25 years ago and FX that realistic just weren't widely available. Was this the Chechen beheading video? I saw it a long time ago. I'm talking maybe 25 years and it still haunts me. The sound may have been worse than the video. I remember seeing this when I was in elementary school. That sticks with you. The guy on Twitter who fucked his vacuum cleaner and eating a mouse alive while being dressed like a cat. Maureen Ponderosa? Excuse me, her name is Bastet now. I was on R5050 last night and watched a guy commit suicide with a shotgun. I was a little high and it was right before bed. It really fucked with my head. Is it the one where he's on the couch and just blows his head off? A Mexican cartel killing 3 guys getting beheaded in a cornfield, one at a time. 2 of them went pretty quietly, but the second guy was screaming and crying, absolutely terrified. Just after my husband and I split up, I was going through our videotapes to find a blank one to record something. It was a video of my husband having with someone that was certainly not me. I cried.